It's good to be back.
Yeah, it is.
Everybody loves to always try to go to the final level. Everybody always wants to know the super secret esoteric tech that makes, Faker better than anybody else, that makes Simple or Donk better than everybody else. But the thing that they have more than everybody else is a master of the fundamentals. And in this sense, you cannot go to level 10 concepts if you do not have the infrastructure and the foundation to be able to understand these lenses through. And this is why it can sometimes feel a little bit frustrating, because I'm not just giving you an entire bakery of all of these esoteric topics and giving you every super secret piece of wisdom right away. Because the foundations are something that is the only way in which you can take a topic with care.
Yeah, that's something I think is really important to understand when you're entering any of the spaces where you want to expand the horizons of knowledge. In our last episode, we talked a lot about mindsets and kind of worldviews and how they can be weapons of this or that. And the reality is, just like you made the analogy of you don't want to give a toddler a shotgun, you don't want to be jumping in at the highest level of efficacy when it comes to ideas. So understanding that we can't just start discussing what we would consider maybe the highest level of esoteric knowledge, because we want to make sure, and part of the reason doing this series is we will talk with people and maybe spend, I watch Yasukeh do this often, where we'll meet somebody and that person is totally willing to go at varying levels and understand different concepts, but he has to spend close to 30 minutes or an hour just to educate one person on all the little areas they may be missing before they're really well able to understand the big picture. Like, even if you start with just, oh, here's the big thing, here's the big reveal, then if that's up here, they ask all the questions of, well, what about this pillar and this pillar and this pillar? So it's just as well you start from the ground up of laying the foundation for different beliefs and concepts, rather than just trying to go straight to the top and then working down of like reverse engineering how to get to that area. It can actually be much slower to do it that way. So I think understanding to begin with is really, really important, the lower concepts.
Yeah, one of my biggest pals, biggest buddies, he very, very smart guy, very competent, like within the programming that he does, programmer, probably top 10 in the country in terms of the like skill and the ability to apply it. Very, very competent person. You would think, and especially if you meet him now, you would think that he's always been a very competent person. But until he was about like 17 or 18, he didn't understand that stories had plots. And he just thought that it was a sort of a sheet of separate events that are going on. As soon as that happens, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have to go back and reconsider everything. And there's somebody here who has had a similar sort of awakening recently in the idea that, oh, a story has plots and it's not just point A to point B to point C. And once you get to that point, then you have to go back to essentially children's stories, because every piece of media, every story has a certain amount that it is asking of you. It is asking that you understand these other concepts that it's playing into, and that it is building upon those things. And if you don't have that necessary foundation, then you don't have the ability to appreciate what this is giving you.
Yeah, I think that's totally correct. And you can look at people who have come through that kind of journey, and like you said, you look at them at the finished product and you just go, wow, this person's like super competent. They must have been born with it. But the reality is we all actually have to learn how to kind of interpret narratives and how to understand what's being asked of us when a story or when a conversation is even being started. And so most of us tend to learn this kind of by proxy in a certain way, but we can all stand to learn more. And similarly, when it applies to broadening your horizons, it is important that you make sure the fundamentals are most understood. Like you mentioned Faker. Fundamentals are pretty important before you can go on to super epic plays. And so I think one of the fundamentals that's been really helpful that you and I have been talking about this summer is the concept of the high, medium, and low risk. This is kind of one of those things where when it is understood, you get greater grasp of kind of masculinity, what it is to be masculine. And then you also get an understanding for why competition is what it is. So I think it would be awesome if you would kind of run us through that, because it's really your conception, your crystallization of the conception of how people fit into those categories, right?
Yeah, so this is where you actually have probably the best analogy for this, but I'll give it anyway. Sure, is in agriculture, right? Agriculture is probably the best example to where you can look at a low risk individual, a high risk individual, and a medium risk individual, because I assume that you guys all know, that farmers farm, and that you understand enough basic things about farming to where you can get this analogy. And if you don't understand those basic things about farming, then you're not going to get anything. So, in this sense, there is the low risk farmer. The low risk farmer has their plot of land that they farm, and they're going to farm that. And that's all they're going to farm. A medium risk individual is going to take the plot of land that they are on and then expand on top of it. Try to get a little bit of land that's like right next to their land. And then the high risk individual is going to, during the winter when there's no ability to farm, they're going to go several miles out in the winter, build a cabin, and then try to develop a completely new plot of land from scratch. And the high risk individual in that situation might just die. They might just not get get through the winter. But if they do make it, now all of a sudden the community overall has this bigger plot of land. And this is where competition is so valuable and so important, because it really makes you understand where people are at and what kind of resources that you need to give to people.
Yeah, in kind of that conception, when you talk about the community, each individual person is taking the risks that realistically make sense to them. The low risk individual, they really vibe with taking lower risks. It makes sense to them. And like we've talked about a little bit earlier, the high risk individual, it makes sense to them. They're not thinking, oh, that's like a super high risk. They're kind of just innately thinking, I should do this thing because I can do this thing, and I think I can. And so when we look at competition in sports, especially things like archery or wrestling or tracking or hunting, where we're placing a lot of onus on someone to go out and do something that's risky, in a really bare bones society, it just takes so much more to equip that individual. And when you're short on resources, you don't want to be equipping people who can't actually deliver on the task. So you need to actually know who is high risk and who is medium or low risk, because someone may say, I'm a high risk individual, you should entrust me with some extra supplies and I'll go develop this land. But they're actually out of their comfort zone and they're not the best equipped to do that. But if you have competition, then you can reveal who are the true high risk guys, the guys that are really willing and able to take the risks and reap the rewards. And then as a community, you kind of want to put those people up at the forefront of your expansion, your adventurers, your explorers, because they're going to use your resources well and give you a return. And this analogy really actually adapts well to the modern age as well. We understand it best through kind of this agricultural lens or community lens, but it still helps today to understand that so you can find out where you fit.
This is something that really applies to every level of organization, to where you're trying to complete any task with anybody. And then understanding you have to have people that are medium risk, that are also maybe trying to take the low risk people and then get them just a little bit higher if it's needed, or take the high risk person and then sort of not try to stifle them, but to try to give them maybe a little bit of like support or direction to make it be more likely to succeed, because you're giving your own sort of perspective or viewpoint. Because there are a whole bunch of situations that could be, a high risk thing that I'm totally willing to do, but it could go from a really high risk to just a kind of a high risk thing if I get the perspective of somebody who's medium risk, and in the kind of perspective of who you should be giving the resources to in terms of high risk, medium risk, low risk. It's really important to have a actual understanding of that and not just take somebody's word that, oh, I'm a high risk individual, because the person who is innately high risk is also just somebody who's used to taking high risks. So they have a lot more comfortability in it, and they take the high risk thing and turn it into a low risk thing. So in the sense of, we were working on a job and there was a lot of a particular section of the work that was really risky to do. And when I was the one who's willing to do the risky work, and when I was doing the risky work, I was doing as much as possible to guarantee that nothing bad was going to happen. And then there was somebody else who generally we would understand to be a lower risk individual who tried to do a little bit of that same job. And I was so uncomfortable watching that because the low risk individual in question did it in a high risk way because they're not used to taking high risks. And then they understood that and they're like, okay, I tried this for a little bit. I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm going to go. It's because of that not being used to knowing what it is like to take high risks that made the low risk person be in an even more risky spot than the high risk person.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where when you think about it, the more you do something, the better you're at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're high risk, you're taking more high risks, and that's kind of normal to you. But you also get really comfortable with those risks in the sense that, like you mentioned, mitigating them.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of to turn it, pivot it to kind of how there's like how can the viewer or how can the common individual understand where they fit in this thing? There's lots of really good allegories for this. And so we can look at sports. Not everyone plays sports, but also we have like video games in the modern age,
Mm-hmm.
which do a pretty good approximation. You and I both played League of Legends. You at a much higher level than me,
Mm-hmm.
but I played a lot more constructed play than you did, and it's all kind of fits with what we would expect from our archetypes. Myself played League of Legends, and I was a support main, shot caller, very much initiator, making calls. But for me, I'm always looking for the less risky thing. And so when I would get elevated to that position in these teams I'm playing with in constructed play, I take that position of the leader, kind of the sensible one. But there are other guys on my team who are way more willing to take risks. And that allows me to kind of balance that.
Mhm.
They can take those risks, and I can see more clearly what's a good risk or what the reward really is.
Mhm.
Because like I say, when a high risk individual does something, they're not always considering what's the risk to reward. They're just thinking this is a normal thing I would do.
Yeah.
So they're not always looking at what the reward is. They
Mhm.
may see it's like, oh, really low reward, but it's something I would do. So me in the medium risk kind of category of individual, it makes sense that I'm in the position to kind of rein that back a little bit, but then also to encourage lower risk individuals to go in with me kind of in that position. And it translates out of League of Legends. The position I have in the company I'm with is very much that exact same leadership position, delegation, understanding, okay, this person wants to do this thing. Can they actually do it? And is it worth the time for them to try? And this is why it's super helpful to have high risk individuals in your company or in your friend group or your community. And likewise, very helpful to have low risk. But what you're going to see is oftentimes the leaders come out of that kind of medium area who can understand both perspectives and kind of temper it.
Yeah. And that's always why people that are, there's the main character archetype, there's the anime protagonist,
Yeah.
and there is the leader. And these are not the same character. These are completely different archetypes. And the person who is the leader innately cannot be the star of the show. They cannot be the one who is like the super big character who's like, all right, they're going to make the clutch play at the end of the game that is going to win the unwinnable.
Yeah.
That is going to take the high risk individual. And this is also why the star players in pretty much any discipline make for horrible teachers. They're not very good at like coaching. I'm good at coaching in the sense that I can explain concepts very well, but I have much lower patience compared to somebody who is that more medium risk like leader archetype. And like for that reason, I didn't necessarily like coaching with League, especially. To go back into, you were the support main that was sort of reining people in, whereas my playstyle was essentially to take as much agency as possible and take situations to where a low risk individual, if they're losing lane, they're playing mid Tryndamere, they're losing lane. And mid Tryndamere in general is already a risky thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people would just sit in lane and like, okay, how can I mitigate the losses as much as possible? Whereas if I'm in a losing situation, I'm just going to go dive bot or invade the enemy jungle or just do something to where the game is more within my control of taking as much agency as possible, even if it's a bad thing. Like, I still want to have that agency because I could not tolerate being in the situation that a low risk individual would be okay with, of like, all right, I'm going to be the solid rock for my team that is the foundation for other people to work on. And that's perfectly fine that you need people of different roles. If you try to have everybody be the high risk individual, you're going to have a lot of people just randomly pop off. But it will be like incongruent. You might have some times to where this person succeeds, but then the other person is like completely just running it down. And this is why the team composition that you have in both a video game, Counter-Strike, League, or in life or on a crew is very important, of understanding where everybody slots and having a right dynamic. Because if you're in a situation to where we're talking a lot about like, oh, high risk individuals are so great, but no, there is a value of a balance. Low risk individuals are still really important. And if you don't have those people, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk also about Sefka, it's a mutual acquaintance of ours. And you look at the way he played League of Legends, and he's universally considered a low-risk individual. He's playing Malphite top. That it just fits in the sense that it's consistent. He can get the same results all the time. He doesn't have to do anything risky necessarily, especially in the meta in which he was very, very successful in. Malphite top was just pretty much a guaranteed thing, or as close as you can get. And then when you see him in life, it's the same kind of outlook where he's just taking the guaranteed thing. And it's not at all bad. This isn't like a detriment. It's super helpful because even people like me who are medium risk, if he is in my corner, I know I'm always going to come back to find him not losing. You know what I mean? And so, and there's guys on my crew that are the same way, where I can be doing something and I task these really solid, low-risk individuals, and I know they're not going to try something silly. They're going to go and do exactly what they know is correct, and they're still competent individuals. They're not going to save a whole bunch of time, and they're not going to lose time. And that's really, really helpful because that gets consistent numbers for, like in my case, being able to predict or bid other jobs based on, you know, these guys are always going to get X amount of work done in X amount of time frame. Compared to the high-risk guy, he may save you a whole bunch of time unexpectedly, or he could be not really useful at all because he's kind of not, he's taking risks and they aren't working out. So in that regard, having the balance of that, it's like you need high-risk individuals, and they're very prestigious, but they're also very rare, just naturally. You don't need that many of them in a community, which is why the competition is always trying to find, well, who is like the highest risk guy? One of the things we talk about is the highest risk you can get is to the point where people think you're insane. Once they think you're insane, you're no longer a service to the community because no one trusts you. They're like, well, that guy is just, he's doing insane stuff.
Yeah, and that's a thing of, there's always sort of perception management in that sense of, people always say it of like, oh, you don't want to reveal your power level. This is something that's just talked about forever. In that this is a really common thing that somebody in our circle just faced in the Yasu court, to where they're trying to sort of be more of a leader in their circle, in their family, and just having a situation to where they get put on the spot and they say something a little bit too extreme for the situation. And now all of a sudden, everything that he says is inevitably in these types of situations going to be clouded with that. This is an extreme person. This is somebody that is so far off the pale that I can't trust them. So now all of a sudden, when they go, they take a level 1 person and they give them a level 2 idea. Now all of a sudden they're like, this is too much for me.
Yeah. All they see is that one level 5, level 6 idea that they heard a long time ago. And they're just kind of like, oh, you're just a crazy person.
Yeah. And this is also just the thing of like, you will never actually get props or validation when everybody suddenly starts having the same idea that they called you crazy for 5-6 years ago. There is somebody here in this community that had a very wild out there idea regarding, family planning, as an example, and essentially was just kind of super ostracized for that was derided as this insane person. And then now all of a sudden everybody has the exact same ideas that he had, but they still considered him insane for whatever reason.
Yeah, they'll still just say that guy's extreme, that guy's crazy, he had that wild idea. And we all think that now, but in their mind they don't even think that direction. But it's kind of that cognitive dissonance of like, but my emotions were that he was insane back then, so why would that change even though now I've adopted that kind of concept? Obviously the Overton window is a thing that applies in this respect. If you're not familiar, I'll just explain Overton window, because it's a pretty well-known concept, but you hear it misused a lot because it is colloquially known as a social thing. So the Overton window is the way in which you perceive truth and untruth. And so the way it works is, you suppose you're in front of a window and you're looking out the window, and the window is, a little in front of you, and it's a small window. And so what you see out the window is all that you can know. And then what happens is, as you change angle proportionate to that window, you start to see different things. And the Overton window phenomenon is one where the person forgets everything that is not currently in view from an intellectual perspective, but they retain the emotional implication of it. So in that regard, you can retain the emotion you felt when you were viewing things a different way. And of course, this is allegorical. I'm not actually referring to a physical window, but rather the window of belief or the window of understanding. As you go through life, your Overton window will shift. And this is something you have to be very careful of. This is why diarying can be really important. Journaling, which are two different things, but either one of them are fine. Some way to capture your thoughts, because what can happen is 10 years from now, you're going to think totally different than you do now. And that maybe in small ways, maybe in large ways, but your Overton window will have shifted to the point where you have emotional connotation from the feelings that were requisite to the belief you had now. But in 10 years, those emotions aren't going to be relevant to your new set of beliefs. So this is something we see. So this is how the Overton window applies. You view a person in a particular way, and then 10 years later, maybe you're seeing what they saw, what they were telling you about. And now you go, oh yeah, they were right about this thing, but you still feel a particular way towards them. People like Jordan Peterson have this kind of experience where he'll say something, and this is not an awesome example, but it illustrates the point. He'll say something and people will go, wow, that's extreme. Like he says, Hitler was a great leader. And when he said it, people were like, how can you say something nice about Hitler? You must be a Nazi. And then now plenty of people are in that Overton window where they go, oh yeah, I can see how Hitler might have been considered a good leader because he was charismatic and he did these things. But they'll still look at Jordan Peterson like he's crazy. And that happens to this individual in the circle that we're in on that regard. So it's very much something that occurs frequently. So you shouldn't be surprised if you kind of show your power level and people who are not able to see what you see get an opinion of you. That's not something that's very easy to fix down the road. This goes into what we talked in the last podcast about not necessarily beating people over the head with your ideas and your opinions, because they're not necessarily going to get win friends and influence people, if you will.
Yeah. And this is why there's a lot of experiences where I have this. And then because I've gone through these experiences, there are other people that are going through the same experience of they've changed as an individual for the better. And people still have the perspective of them that they've had because they've known them for more or less their entire lives. An example for me, right, is there was a time period when, I was 18, 17 or so. And I would always just say taxation is theft and just say that all the time.
Nice one.
Yeah. And that was a thing that I went through for about a year or two of just really kind of pushing that because, as a young guy, something that is a common trait for young people is to always talk about the thing that is new to you and that is an idea that you just got. And all of a sudden it's the most important idea and everybody needs to know about this. Everybody needs to know about, Milton Friedman or David Friedman and how a pencil is made and all of this stuff. And then there went by for several years to where I had stopped saying taxation is theft. I, in general, got away from talking about particular ideas. And it took a long time for my reputation to change in that sense. It took several years and a lot of interactions to kind of finally break that. And it's very difficult this is why first impressions are so important. is that it's very difficult to actually change a first impression once it is made. You have a crystallized version, and most people don't actually change. People just generally expect that this person that I know them, and I don't feel the need to put any effort in to sort of update my beliefs on this person.
Yeah.
As a 16-year-old or so, right? I would always be interacting with people that are, 7 years older than me or so. Always in a group to where I was pretty much the youngest person there. And with that, me doing a bunch of dumb young guy stuff, there's still people who have the impression of me that I am still the exact same as I was when I was 16. And I'm so far removed from that, but it would take a long time to rehabilitate your reputation. Once you have a reputation, it will stick.
Yeah, I think, contrary to that, when I first met you in real life, you were already a specific person. Likewise, I was already a specific person. We were kind of having a gaffe about looking through my old Instagram.
Yeah.
And you were just kind of like, wow, this is a totally different guy than I know. And it's like, yeah, that's how you change, right? If you knew me back then, you might have just been like, write this guy off. Like, what a he's just out there not really paying attention to anything. And similarly, if I knew you at 16, I might have just been like, that's just a goofy guy. But because we met at the time we did, it's like, oh, this is someone who cares and someone who's paying attention to what's going on. So it's kind of important to come across the way you want to, and not get too bogged down in the necessity that this person understand everything I know. It's not super important that you bring everyone in your life up to your level. And this kind of ties in, I want to tie this back to both the high risk, low risk matrix and to the concept that we open this episode with, which is you need to have the fundamentals so that you're not just kind of grasping at straws or having problems. And that is high risk individuals, such as yourself, are always going to be more amenable to new and strange ideas. So understanding who in your circles are high, low, and medium risk may also change the way you're able to interact with them and where you're able to give them. We always say that like you require 17, 18% belief in a particular concept in order to investigate it fully and to almost act as though it were true for a time period, like a trial. Whereas myself, I need to be more like 60, 70% sure before I'm willing to do kind of anything in the vein of really applying the concept to my life. And it's just reflecting the risks we're willing to take as normal, as, I'm not willing to waste that amount of time. You're willing to take that risk because you're used to taking the higher risks and you're better at, compromising the damages that a risk might do. Therefore, it'd be much easier for someone to talk to you about something than it would be for them to talk to me about something. People have to use kind of baby gloves with me, comparatively speaking, to talk about these ideas. Now, obviously, we're both pretty far out on a lot of different topics, so that's not strictly applicable, but it applies in the sense of risk and behavior. And so identifying who in your circle is what can be really helpful for helping you navigate what should I say to who, and who is going to require a lot more evidence or a lot more proof, or they're just going to think you're insane, versus someone who's going to entertain the idea, think about it, and go, oh, maybe I can find out for myself. I'm going to put my own time and energy into buying into this idea, so to speak.
Yeah, and so in that sense, like it is just understanding not only just yourself, but the people around you, and then how you're actually going to sort of approach them. If there's somebody who is more... So for you, I can bring out a completely new wild idea, and I understand how you will sort of consider that idea. And it could take some time for you to like get on board to it, but you are willing to sort of hear it out. And this is also the value in sort of the trickle down, right? Is that the low risk individual is going to look at the medium risk individual for, what would be a new concept that is like more solidified, because they want to be 100% in on an idea. And they're going to look at the person who's 60% in on the idea. Whereas you are going to look at the person who's 17% into the idea to change that. And it's also just personally something that I like about the kind of role that I take, especially in like health stuff, is that I'm a hyper responder to things, in that things affect me very intensely. And so with that, and then also my ability to articulate certain things, is that I can really, really feel and understand what is the actual value of this, what is it actually doing, and then so I can process that and then give that information out there. It's almost like I'm a crash test dummy for, oh, hey, there's this new supplement or this new therapy or this new exercise. Like, what is the actual value of this? Whereas if you don't have somebody in your life that is that bridge, then you'll never really sort of advance in ideas.
Again, goes back to why it's so important to have the whole chain, so to speak. I live in a fairly rural area, don't have a lot of people to draw on in my circle. And so in my circle, I feel okay saying this, you're pretty much the only like really high risk individual. There's no one in my typical circle that I'm hanging out with or dealing with who's super high risk, which is in keeping with the fact that they're rare in general. So your usefulness to me explicitly is really, really high because for a lot of activities, a lot of my work stuff and a lot of my sports stuff, I'm the highest risk guy, and I'm not really a high risk guy. There's one or two people that I play, weekend sports with who I can point to, but they're not really in my, circle. But I can point to those guys and go, oh, those are high risk guys. So they're helpful in the sports sense. I can ask them athletic questions or tactics on their specific sport, but they are not as helpful in the health and fitness space or even really in what I would call philosophy. Because I think it takes a high risk individual to kind of quote unquote dream up new philosophy or to explore new philosophy or apply it even. I'm very much like, I want to use the philosophies that make the most sense to me. But that's in the medium risk area. So I'm less likely to adopt new. So just specifically because of where I live, you are like exceedingly valuable in my circle. And so that's something that also other people can look at in their friend group is who is the highest risk person here? Because it's on a scale, right? It's not this person is X category and X category. It's we're using these abbreviated medium, high, or low risk kind of to place people. But if you're on the higher side of medium, you might find yourself in that position where you have to kind of bring all the new concepts to your group. And you should understand that that means you can't be the leader of your group. Even though you might be the leader of a different group of people, if you were socializing with them, you may find, oh, I have like leadership tendencies, but my group doesn't support me as the leader. But they're always taking my advice or asking me for this thing or that thing. That may be because you're just on that higher side of medium. So for your group, you're high risk, even though overall, global population, you may fit better as a leadership role elsewhere. Doesn't mean you need to upend your life, but it's something to consider when you're seeing how your friend group plays out in dynamic.
Yeah, and that's something that's just really important to sort of understand is that the role that you are innately suited to is not necessarily going to be the role that is appropriate to where you're at, because you don't get to choose the situation that you're at perfectly. And this also just kind of goes into a general thing of people are always generally very skeptical of somebody who's just a singular person coming into a new community, because why don't they have a community? Like, why are they just kind of randomly upending their life and coming here? And so in that sense, it just makes sense why you would be sort of skeptical of somebody. You just have the group that you have, and then you take the role that is best suited to you and your capabilities, and it might not be the perfect fit. Somebody that we work with, somebody who's essentially the boss, right? He is not somebody who is innately a boss figure. It's not something that is suited to him at all, but he was put into a situation to where he had to assume this role and he had to take on this role. And that's been a journey for him. It's been very difficult, but he has been able to succeed within that, although it wouldn't be the role that he takes if he had like a perfect choice.
So related to that, have you gone over your gamer tag publicly, the meaning of it?
Oh, yeah.
Because it relates to exactly his situation, really, in a small sense.
Yasuke?
Yeah, him being the Yasuke, so to speak.
Yeah. So I'll just say like what my thing is, and then you can relate it. So Yasuke, essentially, I don't believe that he even existed as a historical figure, but in general, the idea of Yasuke, known in Assassin's Creed Shadows.
we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, a black samurai in feudal Japan. And the idea of the name and how it suits me is making something of yourself in a place where you don't belong, in that kind of gamer Twitch streaming sphere. That is not something that is naturally the kind of person that I am. I'm not somebody who is like these people. I don't fit here. I am not somebody of this land, yet I am determined to make something of myself in this land that I don't belong, just like Yasuke.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you could tell this basically from the first stream that I tuned into, that this guy's not like other Twitch streamers, and that's not just like stroking the ego. It's literally you don't fit in, you know? So this boss guy that we're talking about kind of has a similar thing in that, like, if he was in a perfect world where he got exactly the role assigned where he belongs, so to speak, he would be one of these, you know, really dependable kind of lower risk individuals. But instead he was kind of thrust into this role. It was just the situation made it so he had to. And then he's just determined to make it work. And it is working. Like, it's doing really well. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think we might have him on later, give his full story.
Yeah,
that might be something that's happening.
That's on the cards. We'll see. But yeah, it's just like really impressive. So that's kind of a Yasuke in a way, not nearly as extreme as what like you're doing, but like we've talked about this before. I had like a foray into kind of, you know, I did streaming for a while and I did shoutcasting for a while with some amateur groups. I felt so much that was not my people group and not where I wanted to be that I just gave it up entirely. So you're saying that Captain Flowers isn't your guy?
No. I may catch flack for this, but I talked to him one time.
Yeah.
I casted for the same org he did. No, that's totally exactly what I'm saying, is that like those people just weren't my people. And so for me, being the medium risk guy I am, I'm like, well, why would I risk hanging out with people I don't vibe with? I'll just, you know, get out of that space entirely. So even doing, you know, this podcast with you, it's something that I think is really, really awesome. And I really love our conversations. And I think it needs to be out there, but in a very real way. You know, it's not my thing. It's not what I do. So in that regard, I have to admire the high risk endeavor of fitting in where you don't belong. So that's kind of, that's something that is, I think, just in my mind, so high risk, because you're putting in so much effort for, you know, it's a high reward if you make it, you know what I mean? Just in terms of what goes on. But then also we see the footprint you have. So it's like clearly working.
Yeah. And it's also just biggest thing that I think about in terms of like, what is success to me, in the sense of like, what is there's the high risk and then there's the high reward. What is the high reward to me is when I see people taking on an idea that they otherwise never would have taken on, that they take on because of me, and then they are rewarded for it.
Yeah.
Your people got into maple syrup milk recently.
Yeah.
And that's just such a small thing, but it's like, this is just the most yummy thing in existence. So like, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, getting into this is very good.
I'll be more direct. He was like, you should try maple syrup in milk. And I was like, no, that sounds a little weird. And now everyone, you know, my children and my wife and me are all just like, I gotta have maple syrup in my milk now.
Yeah.
It's not complete with a little maple syrup in there. So like, yeah, I just never would have done that. And even when he mentioned it to me, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'll give that a shot. So I had a similar experience. Someone suggested balsamic vinegar on vanilla ice cream. It's really good.
Okay.
I can't describe the flavor. You should try it. And you should try it. It's just really good.
Yeah, I haven't tried that out.
Yeah.
Definitely have to. Seeing people, like, especially when, you know, you having, you know, very poor hips. And...
okay. No, this is something that we talked about, because actually one of the first things when you got back into this part of the world, that was one of the first things that when we went to the gym, it's just like, hey, I need this. I need help.
Yeah.
Having very real trouble, you know?
Yeah, and this was the thing is that around the time that I had quit streaming League was when I was getting like a really, really pretty insane health issue. I had ulcerative colitis. I was bleeding buckets of blood every day. I was, you know, getting up every 5 minutes at night. I wouldn't be able to get any sleep. I was so delusional that I was creating stories and I was referring to myself as we, because I was, you know, disembodying myself into multiple entities. Almost.
I think we call that dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah. And so not having any of that kind of sleep. So I lost 56 pounds in about 2.5 months. I went from, super healthy, super in shape to just being put into the situation that was just really, really intense. One of the biggest things that first got me to the point to where I went from being bedridden or couch ridden to being at a point where I can actually live is smoking pipe tobacco, right? And the way that I got into that idea was just looking at people's anecdotes of there were certain people who got the same issue that I did when they went on a health kick and stopped smoking. And then that's when they got their issue. And then when they started smoking again, the issue went away. And that was more than enough for me to just try it out. It's the most tenuous anecdote possible. A lot of people wouldn't really think much of more. But if I were to go to the doctors or like the modern medical system, they would have taken out my colon and I would have had to have like gone in a bag for the rest of my life. And I'm not willing to do that kind of thing because, if we're rolling, we're doing some jujitsu, I don't want to just have like, a bag just pop out. You wouldn't want that either.
I wouldn't want. Hey, you want to roll, buddy?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, jujitsu.
Yeah, exactly.
So in that sense, that was more than enough for me to just sort of be willing to try it. And then it was, later, several months later, that I found out that there were actually a ton of studies on smoking tobacco specifically for ulcerative colitis. I may not have ever ran into those studies if it wasn't something that I tried from an anecdote first and then started looking a lot more into it. Because of that, I still have a colon now, and I like having my colon. I don't like doctors stealing my body parts.
It's not a cool thing. And that really showcases, I don't know how to say, it couldn't have happened to a better person.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the sense that someone else would have broken so far. I mean, you didn't break, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can say you referring to yourself as we was broken, but realistically, no, because breaking would have been going to the hospital and just letting them do whatever they want to do to you.
Mm.
And, I know that your situation is not as uncommon as it used to be. And I know lots of guys who've gotten to the breaking point with mental strength and things. So you being that high risk individual, willing to just off a few anecdotes be like, I'll try this thing that most people would say, don't start smoking tobacco. That's really, really bad for you.
Yeah.
And let alone doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of those things where I would never have made that leap or that conclusion either.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of other people who wouldn't. So just in terms of what is willing to be done and then what trickles down and is helpful for the rest of the people, I think knowing your position in the group can be helpful to kind of understand where you're at, what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like in that anecdote, saved basically your life.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool. That's the guy you want to give the resources to.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I'll just die rather than give up my body parts. Like, that's pretty high risk.
Yeah. Like it, that is the exact way of saying it, is that it's super high risk of, I want to keep my body part, but I'm also actively in the stage to where I'm borderline dying. Every time I'm getting up, I'm literally just passing out because I'm losing so much blood. I have no color. I'm just sitting on your couch, half conscious. I have a certain standard, certain philosophy on certain things, certain principles that I'm unwilling to go against. And because I am in that sort of high risk category, I'm going to exhaust every single option possible. If there's any lead that was ever a thing, I tried so many different therapies, so many different things. And it's just like, okay, all right, it's this track. It's like serotonin in my gut. It's this thing. It's that thing. This also goes into high risk is whatever, but it's about the angle in which you dedicate it towards. So it's about the sort of the underlying philosophy and the underguiding principles in which your high risk behavior is manifested.
Mm-hmm.
So in this sense, I was really against having doctors take more of my body parts than they already have. And so I'm willing to take this risk and go into that because this is something that is very important to me. And this also just goes into having certain ideals and trying to find out what are the things that are actually important to you and being able to sort of question these things because some people hold high importance on things that are actually just very negative towards them, about like, oh, how many girls can I shag or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of high risk. Somebody who in that sphere is very high risk, who's very promiscuous, they can have a lot of success in terms of the ideas and philosophies that they personally have, but that's not necessarily going to be something that is beneficial to them. Whereas if they had those proclivities or ideas of there's somebody who wants to be promiscuous, it might be better for them to be a low risk individual.
Yeah.
Because then they wouldn't actually be doing these things.
This ties into kind of something that is a condensation that I have made. There's a booklet out there called The Technology of Belief. You shared this in your Discord. It's, in my opinion, a pretty high level read, but there's one kind of principle that I've been able to kind of condense out of the whole book that I think is easy for people to digest. And that is, what is a technology of belief? And so this isn't stated this way in the book. So if you read the booklet, which I recommend you do, you're not going to see this in there. This is my kind of restatement of a certain facet of that booklet. And so what it is there's high technology beliefs and low technology beliefs. And what this kind of goes into is how effective are those beliefs at changing your life? There's technologies to this. So the lowest technology of a belief is a convenient belief. Mm-hmm. So this belief in this case can be either a philosophy, it can be a truth that you hold, or it could be some sort of objectivity that's in your life. Like you mentioned, shagging a bunch of girls, like that's objectively a good thing. Well, that's a belief. Mm-hmm. So holding that belief because it's convenient, because the people around you kind of support this is a low technology belief, and it doesn't help you impact the world or change your station. Mm-hmm. I recently went to a wedding, and it was in a bar, and all of the people there were not exactly my type of people, and they were what I would consider all very low tech belief individuals. What I mean by that is they had no ability to change really anything about their life because all of their beliefs were simply low tech beliefs. And then there's a scale in this, but I'm kind of being a little bit brief in this. At the highest level of technology is the beliefs that you will die for. That just, it doesn't matter what the result or consequence of it is, you follow the belief. Mm-hmm. So if you believe doctors shouldn't take your body parts, and you believe it so firmly that it doesn't matter what anyone else says or what anyone else does, you're going to take this one with you to the grave, that helps you change your life. It transforms your life. So one of the things we can do is look at our different beliefs and kind of go, well, are they more high tech? Do I hold these because I just believe this absolutely is true? Or are they more on the low tech side of, well, it's convenient for me to believe this for now? And that kind of helps us shape this. And this is almost parallel to like the high risk, low risk kind of thing, because high risk individuals are more likely to have high tech beliefs, which also means they could be more frustrating to deal with. They upset social norms. They don't conform to cultural norms as well, which is detrimental on the whole to a society. Mm-hmm. You need to have cultural established norms. But the lower risk people are less likely to have super high tech beliefs. They can still have them. I'm not trying to say they don't have them, but they're going to be fewer. They're going to have a lot more lower technology beliefs that don't change their life so much. But in this case with you, just believing that so purely, that belief gives you power in a way. Mm-hmm. In the same way, like a guy who's like, oh, I'm high risk, and like I think it's a good thing to shag a bunch of girls. He has power to make that happen. It just happens. And if he believes that on a very high level, it really changes his whole life. You see this with movie stars and people who are in what I would consider degenerate spaces. They are like, money is everything, and I believe that at the core. Well, guess what? It changes their life. They have tons of money. Mm-hmm. These people go after it and they go get it. It's because their belief is a very high-tech belief. And so that's something that kind of goes into philosophy and other things, is you need to know what technology your beliefs are and where they fit. Again, you won't find this exactly in the booklet. This is me kind of just boiling down a concept here of how you can understand why beliefs are important, and not just that a belief is important, but what level it is.
Yeah, and this Technology Belief by James True.
Thank you.
Very, very valuable. This also just goes into sort of revealed preferences. Mm-hmm. Of, you can say that you like a certain thing or that this is something that you believe in, but then it's not until you're actually tested to show whether or not this is something that you're actually about that life. Obvious example that you could give is professing Christ. When you are in a situation to where your entire community around you is Christian, then it's very easy to have that belief. But are you willing to have that belief when you go into, Seattle or Portland and you're going there to work and everybody around you is actively antagonistic towards Christ.
Mhm.
They hate him.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it would be a high technology to be in that scenario where it is the unpopular thing. It is not convenient for you to hold this belief, and then you still hold it. This is also something you see in, people will have selective skepticism towards authorities. You see this all the time where people will say, oh, I don't trust studies, or I don't trust the news, or I don't trust this. But then when they say something that they like, it's like, oh, see, now even they're saying it.
Yeah. All scientists are lying except when they agree with my point of view. Then they're telling the empirical truth.
Yeah. And so it's just like, if you have the principle of, okay, I understand all of these ways in which this, like, news, something could be inauthentic. Like, oh, they don't actually have to say what is truth. And then, here's all these incentives that they have. Even if you want to go on like the low level layer of, oh, they just want to do what is best for views.
Right.
Even if you want to take a low level layer like that, if you're only going to take that layer for things that you disagree with and then not for things that you agree with, then it's just a matter of convenience. That is just a principle that you hold only when it's convenient, as opposed to having something that is going to be like steadfast and you're going to have it no matter what. In the same way that there's high risk, medium risk, and low risk people, there's a certain level of tolerance that a society can have for the people that have high technologies of belief that are especially not perfectly congruent with the community.
Yeah, one of the things that is kind of, we're not talking about as much because it's not as relevant, but is you can have high-tech beliefs that are not necessarily tested. It's not that, oh, if you've never been in a situation where this is really dangerous, you just don't have a high-tech belief. But those people are just useful to society, and it shows out over the course of, 50, 60 years. I mentioned before, I live in a rural area, so in terms of community, I know everybody, and 50, 60 years is not that long of a time in these kind of communities, just because no one really moves around. And so you can tell over 50 years, even though there's no adversity open about someone believing something, for instance, like Christ is king, there's no adversity, but it shows in their life that they actually have this as a very high-tech belief. And that's another discernment thing that can be helpful. And don't want to give people the impression they need to constantly going around judging people like, are you high risk, low risk? Do you have high tech, low tech beliefs? Blah, blah, blah. That's not really the point. The point is to understand the concepts exist. It goes back to what we started this episode with, which is just you need to understand these underlying concepts so that you can kind of see where the rest of it comes into play. One of the things that is really relevant to this will be kind of useful beliefs versus not useful beliefs. And that's where you can lose a lot of people on that one, believing something as a high technology belief with very little evidence because the result is very beneficial to your life. That's something that maybe that's just a teaser, but that's a really, really big one that people struggle with. They have a hard time with that. But I think if you understand more baseline what people are predisposed to, what your circles look like, it's easier to understand why people might believe certain things that you would kind of go, oh, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of founding for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is just like the perfect example, but we'll leave that for later. The thing that we're not talking about.
Yeah, right? No, yeah, we're not talking about that. But the jump off point for that I was going for was just that doesn't mean someone's inherently low tech in their beliefs just because they don't disagree with society.
Yeah. So this is also going back to one of the original points is don't take, this new idea that you're just given of this new paradigm and think it's the most important thing ever because it's not. It is a useful lens and it is a tool and it doesn't have to be the only tool at your disposal in which you look at everything through.
Yeah.
So in this sense, take, high risk, low risk, medium risk, understanding of like what role that you play in your community, in your Counter-Strike team, in this, in that. Just take it as what it is, and it is valuable, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. And there's so many more pieces that we're going to be going through over time. And this is why we're not going into, the level 10 ideas right away. This is a very foundational idea that is an important building block for everything else. This is like, reading the classics, reading, Shakespeare, reading the Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen.
Jane Austen,
yeah. Stuff like that, to where having the building blocks that other ideas can be sort of brought onto, because there are certain really, really wild out there ideas to the general understanding that for me to even begin to have the conversation, I need to explain 10 different other concepts and then also prove those other 10 different concepts if there's somebody who's not in the high risk category, which just generally goes into a thing of when we have conversations, perfectly willing to, there might be something that I say that is kind of less than perfectly founded, but then we don't need to get stuck in, okay, justify this point. Yeah. Because that's just a point that goes into this other thing. Just allowing the points to roll, because I'm trying to explain 10 different concepts so that we can get to the grand finale. And then if we get stuck on one of the foundational pieces, then we can't ever get to the big idea. And maybe even that foundational piece might be wrong, but there's still value in going through the entire process, even if it's just for sort of like intellectual recreation.
Yeah.
To where,
that's a good way to put it.
Even if the idea isn't true, even if the base idea that you're attacking isn't true, and then the further idea isn't there, being able to go through those thought processes, being able to go through those reps can be incredibly valuable when interacting with another idea.
I think one of the ways this can be analogized somewhat is when you are dealing with civil engineers. Mm-hmm. One civil engineer may be working on a particular project, a bridge or something like that, and he's doing lots and lots of math and doing lots and lots of work. And then he gets to a certain point and he might say, the engineering on this beam, this particular linchpin that's way at the top of this whole structure, I'd like to get a second opinion on. And that engineer then takes those plans and he takes them to a second civil engineer. And he circles for the engineer, hey, I want you to do the equations here, make sure my math is right, check that this is correct. If that other civil engineer just kind of turns to him and goes, well, I want to make sure every calculation from the ground up was correct first, that could be valuable, or it could just be slowing the whole process down. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that, we talk about, I understand where I'm at, what I'm able to process as far as concepts and the proofs I need to adopt them, and you're separate from that. It's easy for me then to go, okay, well, we don't need to worry about all the groundwork because he's talking about this concept up here. Mm-hmm. I can do my own research and try and figure out the other stuff on my own time. But if he's asking about this thing or he's bringing up a conversation point that's this thing, that's what we want to focus on, is just the subject, just that little linchpin to figure out, well, what does this actually mean in the end? And that's kind of a useful way to understand how people may bring ideas to you. If you're only going to ever say, but what about this, but what about that, and what about the other thing that are relatively off topic to it, it's going to be much harder for you to understand the broader concepts in the higher levels. But mm-hmm. a conversation like we're having now, these episodes, the whole goal is to kind of bring things up from the ground up. That's why it's in this long format in terms of, how many episodes we're realistically doing here and covering kind of the bases of how you can view these things before going up, so that realistically, hopefully everyone gets brought in kind of at the same level. Mm-hmm. That being said, I've certainly watched series of podcasts where I need to take a break between one and another for a week sometimes, because it's like, I don't have this concept really in my head yet. Mm-hmm. And that's where it comes in, where you're talking about, don't just take the concepts you're hearing and immediately just go to other people and be like, this is the most important thing in the world. Because chances are you may not understand it. If you do understand it really well, that's awesome. But you need to kind of work out what that means for how your specific circle or community is going to be affected by it.
Yeah, and this also goes into the high, medium, low risk thing in terms of the ideas that you're sharing with other people. And going back into the sort of the first impressions thing, when you have a new idea that you bring up to somebody and it's like, oh, you kind of understand it. Like, you get the gist, you get the fundamental thing, but you haven't poked every hole in it yourself. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, somebody else who's a complete layman to the topic that you're trying to explain it to, they poke a bunch of holes and you don't have good answers for them. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, I don't trust this person anymore, because they're showing that, oh, I have super high belief in this idea. that they're not able to sort of answer the tough questions about.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why just stop doing the young man thing of sharing every single idea that comes to you as soon as you have it. And if you do it with people that have the understanding that this is what you're doing. Like if I come to somebody who is a more low risk individual and I am talking about this idea and I'm talking about it with no framework or understanding of what this is, then it's going to be taken as like like you believe this idea 100% fully and you're trying to like convince this of me. Whereas if I'm taking this idea of you can have more success talking about, whatever the new thing is, if you frame it in the way of, here's this new idea that I've been exposed to. I want to talk about it, maybe get your thoughts on it. And in that way, you're separating yourself from the ideas, which is not just beneficial for the person that you're giving it to and their perception of you, but it's also good for your perception of yourself. Because when the person that you're talking to pokes holes in the idea, there can totally be answers to, you just don't know them. Then you don't feel like you are personally being attacked for them because you are not the ideas that you espouse.
This goes back to what you said in episode 1 about divorcing yourself from necessarily some of your beliefs or some of your views. If someone hands you, a set of glasses to look through, and you go around and you're just like, these new glasses are the greatest, I love these glasses, and then someone's like, those glasses are terrible. Well, now you're injured, right? Mm-hmm. But if you frame it in the sort of, hey, how do these glasses look on me? You're divorcing yourself from the glasses. That mm-hmm. glasses is your worldview. So make sure when you're, if you're not 100% sure on something, you don't go out there just like, this is the best thing. Instead, hey, what does this look like on me? How does it look when I employ this worldview, Mm-hmm. And then when other people can give their criticism, it's not a crushing blow to you. It's just, oh yeah, maybe these aren't a fit for me. Maybe mm-hmm. I need something different.
Yeah. And really all of this is just going back into the idea of, first, is that if we are going to be talking about these more dangerous ideas, you need to have the foundations that we're giving to you right now, because I feel like this is a responsibility that I have in order to make sure that I am not ruining your life. Because if I give you super wild out there ideas without the framework to handle these ideas responsibly, and then something bad happens in your life, like I'm going to feel responsible for that.
You are responsible.
Yeah.
I'll cut that. Yeah. You feel responsible because you are.
Yeah. And so I'm doing my best to mitigate that. You still might go into, an idea in episode 10 that's like, oh, hey, this, like super crazy thing. Like, I'm not going to give examples of super crazy things, but
the water thread, for instance.
Yeah, the water thread. Drinking water is bad, and you just shouldn't drink water. Me drinking water, a little bit hypocritical there. I understand. If I had orange juice, I would be drinking orange juice.
Yeah. I didn't stock the fridge with orange juice. That's on me.
Yeah, I was thinking about bringing some.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about just another general idea in that vitamin C increases the absorption of iron. And so also bringing steaks, right?
Yeah.
And so having steak and vitamin C at the same time, it's just a general thing of not wanting to have too much like iron absorption.
Yeah, so orange juice plus cornflakes is basically going to kill you.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the fortified iron.
Yeah.
It's always funny just looking at those things of like that's one of the greatest examples is another league streamer, Irelia, carries you.
Yeah.
Got like really, really like butthurt ass mad about me posting essentially somebody taking cornflakes, crushing them up, taking a magnet, and like you can literally just take all of the literal iron out, because the iron that they use to fortify cereals is not the same type of iron that your body uses and that your body processes effectively, or that your body will get from red meat. So in that sense, it's a layman illustration to show that. And back then, when this was happening in like 2021, considered like super conspiracy theory kind of thing. And then now you see on like, PBS might be doing this exact same thing
Yeah.
and showing you that. And they're like, oh, hey, yeah, this does happen now, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
That follows. This isn't my thing. It's not even really an out there concept, but there was always the now this thing isn't happening. You're crazy. You're crazy. It's definitely not happening. Okay, it's happening, but it's good for you.
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those constant flips, and you see this in psychology. This is a really common thing that kind of more pathological liars will do. So not compulsive liars, but pathological liars. They will tell a lie about something, and they will defend it right up to the point where like they're proven wrong, and then just kind of be like, "Oh yeah, but it's good that I was lying about that thing. Actually, it's like really good for you that I was lying, because actually, if I'd been telling the truth, that'd be really bad for you." It's just a really common trait you see with pathological liars.
Yeah, and this is just something of, if you understand the pathology of a pathological liar, you can understand all of the traits, and you're like, oh, I know exactly what this person is like, because you see certain traits, and then you see that these traits never exist in a vacuum. And this is just generally like just goes into like the stereotype effect. Second most replicable, strong confidence probability wise in psychological science is stereotype effect. And essentially just taking that in that, if somebody has these certain traits of, being a liar in these like small little things, it's never that trait in isolation. Those traits will always follow with all of these other various different things, in the same way of, oh, you can't judge a book by its cover. But the cover is literally meant to advertise the book. And so when you see somebody who is dressing like a tennis player, or no, dressing like a biker, like a cyclist.
A cyclist, right? Okay.
Yeah, a cyclist. You're going to know so much about them by, wearing tight polyester that sweats and seeps into them. If anything, just from a hormonal aspect.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You're going to see similar behaviors in those people as well. One of the things, I was on a truck. We were on a business trip with another guy in my company, and we're just driving down this highway that has a lot of cyclists. They're having like an event. So there's a lot of these cyclists, and we passed maybe 50 or 60 of these cyclists, and he just remarks, he goes, "Why is it that every male cyclist has the exact same face?" And so we were talking about phenotypes and things like that. Then it's like, people who look like that because they want to be seen as this thing. And that goes with pretty much everything from the way, that we're dressed. We want people to know certain things about us by looking at us. But then there's also the health concerns, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, just in different fabrics and stuff. You already mentioned the polyester thing, which I think is not that unknown at this point. Polyester just bad. But like there's a health factor to it, but then there's also, there's stylistic choice and all these different things that we go into. And we express ourselves in that way. It's totally okay. I expect people to kind of judge me by the way that I look, because it's up to me how I look, at least to an extent. And, if you are going to go into physiognomy and phenotype and things like that, then it's even more up to you than maybe you think it is in terms of how you actually look.
Yeah. And that's just going back into the whole first impressions thing. Like, how do you want people to view you? You are... A lot of things in modern society are sort of trying to bring you into this isolated individual, trying to corner you off. And then it's like, oh, hey, you can be whatever you want and not get judged. But everybody judges you. There's nobody who doesn't judge you. And in that sense, that's not a bad thing. That is something that is just a neutral thing. And then it's just the question of, how are you presenting yourself, and how is this actually who you want to be? So just in a general thing is like, me being really sick and being like sort of bedridden. A lot of things are much lower than what I would want them to be in terms of my capacity and capability, both physically, mentally, etc. Not having, league as an example, something that kept me like very much more mentally sharp, because it was something that was like at the peak of my ability to like brain process stuff. Essentially what I'm just trying to go into is the idea of, I know exactly who I want to be, who I'm striving to be, And then it's just a matter of me to actually express that will into the world and have the ideal Yasuke that is in my head become the reality.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think when I started doing more mewing orthotropics type thing, in my mind, I just didn't like what I was presenting. And so the goal in changing that is no, my face doesn't reflect strength. I want to be strong. That's who I want to be. And so all these things are motivated towards getting to that point. And I think so many people buy into the concept like you mentioned, oh, no one's judging you, but actually everyone is looking at you and making judgments about you. They're tricked into not really caring how they look or saying it doesn't matter. And that in and of itself, the apathy shows on the face of individuals. And when that apathy shows, it's not a good look necessarily. I'm not judging people for having bad facial structure. I'm kind of judging people for having bad facial structure.
Yeah.
It's when you look at someone with bad facial structure, there's things you can make, judgments you can make about them. But not caring about your facial structure in and of itself contributes to kind of bad facial structure.
Yeah, and that's just just wrapping it back around to wanting to know who you want to be, and then actually just enacting that. And a big part of that is so many people are in situations to where they would want to be a particular person, but they don't have necessarily the information of how to do it, in that they don't even know that certain things are possible. And so because they don't know that certain things are possible, then they don't even try. So that's where, I recently went into an area where there's just zero people with ambition whatsoever. And there could hypothetically be certain people there. There weren't, but there could have been certain people there that in a different situation would have been striving for something greater. Just sort of the regression to the mean and going back into what is sort of the natural or comfortable thing where people are going into the low technologies of belief. And when they're like that, it will be much more growing accustomed to the environment that you're in. And then it's just a matter of consequence if you actually manage to run into somebody who is more ambitious or high risk or even medium risk, which might be something that is relative to you very high risk. And if you think that there is something that can be done, even maybe, I personally am of the idea of just like exhaust whatever options are possible, or look to see if there even is somebody who is trying to do this thing. I'm never going to look at a problem that I have and say, oh no, that's just something that I'm like perfectly willing to deal with. Or that, oh, everybody just has, headaches. Everybody has migraines. Everybody has, back pain. But okay, there's so many people that are in the business of getting rid of your back pain.
Yeah.
And that you don't need to have back pain into old age. But in a lot of different communities, you'll never even hear the idea of somebody getting, no back pain. Like, 10 years ago, I have, good body, have six pack and all that stuff. Very ideal aesthetic body to a lot of people. And then people that are, 7 years older than me will be like, wait till you're, 25, wait till this, wait till that. And then, I'm at those ages and, still in really good shape.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's understandable that they in their position are going to think that, oh, there's nothing that can really be done about this. And then it's on to me to just sort of understand that. And then maybe I give a little bit of a breadcrumb of like, oh, here's this thing that you're kind of complaining about. Here's something that I've tried that gets rid of this issue. Or, here's somebody that I've helped or somebody that I know that has gone through a similar issue and these are things that they've done. And if they react positively to it, then great, continue on going. If they brush it off or if they just continue making excuses or complaining, then there's no point in really sort of going forward. And this is also just where, like, if you are in a situation to where you do need help, like you just have a lot of things that are not going great, people are very willing to help you if you let them.
Yeah.
People love helping other people, but you need to put yourself into a situation to where you're making it easier for other people.
This draws my mind to kind of my personal struggle with back and knee pain. I've been in the trades pretty much all my life, since I was 13. So I got my high school diploma when I was 13 and went into the trades. And when I was, 17, 18, 19, having like back pain and knee pain. And knee pain I've had all my life. And then I'm just kind of like, oh, well, I just deal with this, I guess. And I guess when I was about 24, had like a repetitive stress injury in my back, which is just working your back too hard in the wrong way. And so I ended up being bedridden for, about a week. And then after a week, I'm feeling a little better. I go to the chiropractor and he's helping me out and all this stuff. And I was basically thinking, I just got to get out of the trades. Like, I'm done with this. I can't do any more. And then I hit on some stuff that was, I don't remember exactly how I got it. I know some of it was shared through the Discord, and some of it I just found elsewhere. Just a few exercises dealing with the hip and the ankle, and just a tiny bit of focus on that alleviated not just the back pain that I was having at that time, which I thought was career ending, and then also my knee pain just went away on its own. And so I was well on that path when Yasukeh came out and he was helping me with stuff 2 years ago. And then this time he comes out, when I say like my hips were a problem, we mentioned that earlier, they're a problem, but they don't actually cause me pain. But I know now the source of all that pain was in the hips. And even just coming off of, 5% back from terrible, terrible hip mobility, all the pain is gone. So it's like, yeah, I still have stiff hips. I have bad mobility and I'm like having struggle in these areas, but then the pain isn't there. To me, that also kind of changed my world, opened my eyes to the concept of all these guys who were at, when I was 24 and going through this, 30, 35-year-old guys like, oh, it only gets worse as you get older. And now, I'm 30 and I'm like, I feel better than I felt when I was 19 in terms of joint pain, in terms of energy levels and mobility. So no, you don't have to live with that. I was going, on this trajectory and literally just a few things change. And it's like total change of an entire attitude, basically, of my body's degradation. And so in that regard, I think you can analogize it somewhat to someone in a prison cell. And there's like, you can either take your spoon and start digging out of your prison cell. And that might be the high risk guy, right? High risk guy be like, I'll just dig out of here with a spoon. Making Prison Break references, of course.
Yeah, and get some tattoos all over, just full sleeves,
Yeah. And then someone else, maybe a more medium risk guy might be like, well, you know what? I'm just going to conserve my energy for now, get stronger, wait for an opportunity. But then there's a totally parallel line of belief, which is I can't escape. And that's the trap. The trap is not picking what level of commitment or what level of risk you're willing to entertain to get out of prison. The trap is I can't get out. And you can be a high risk, medium risk, low risk individual. You can fall for this trap of it's just impossible to get out. So the style of escape doesn't matter. The point, and that's kind of the point. The physical decrepitation of the human body is the prison, so to speak. You got to get out of that. A lot of people don't really believe this. But how you get out of it, for me, it took a lot of convincing. I had to watch a lot of videos, and I had to be in a really painful spot before I'm like, okay, I'll try something that's a little off meta. Whereas now, having gone through that, I'm just like, Yasukeh, what's the most off meta thing you can do to help me with my hips? And I'll do that exercise, like whatever it is. And that's just because of the experience I had. It's not natural to me necessarily to take these super, I don't want to say unproven, but more niche concepts of exercises. And this just applies to everybody. You don't want to fall for the trap of this is just how it is.
Yeah. And this is something of like, there's no such thing as, an idea or a concept or an exercise or something that is inherently like a high risk thing.
Yeah.
So in this sense, there are a ton of ideas that are super out there exercises or ways of understanding nutrition or something like that, that to get onboarded needed me as the high risk individual to take that, but eventually does sort of like bleed out into going all the way down to the low risk individuals.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, like the ideas themselves are not idea the ideas themselves are not strictly related to whether or not you're high, medium, or low risk.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the most risky exercises are like cleans and overhead press, but those are in everybody's general kind of workout routine. There's plenty of people that's totally fine. Whereas like the stuff that you're working with me on in terms of hip mobility, no one looks at those and is like, that looks super sketchy. They're just like, I don't recognize that, and so it's almost like a social risk of I don't want to look silly at the gym. So since I'm a low risk individual, I'm not going to go do the silly looking workout, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really a physical risk even.
Yeah. And this is just tying it back into it's not about what an idea is, as long as you have within your community, within your group, people of all sort of angles, then you can have sort of the benefits collectively.
Yeah.
As long as you have sort of the on ramps and the bridges to every single person, schizophrenics, right? Another concept from James True is the idea that like your eyes have melanin, as in the skin pigmentation thing, and dopamine. Melanin closes your eyes off to things that you don't want to see, and dopamine opens your eyes to things that you want to see. And people that are albino have no melanin, don't have the ability to close off things, and way more likely to be schizophrenic.
Interesting.
And in this conception, traditionally, in a lot of societies, schizophrenics would just be like shamans, you know? They are, in a lot of ways, like borderline crazy people within most paradigms, but there can be value if you have sort of people to like understand their lens and almost like interpret it for them. And the interpretation goes down the line. It's just valuable to understand where you're at and what role do you need to take and what role does your community need. And this might not be the perfect role for you, but you just got to work with what you have in that sense. I think we've exhausted this idea.
I think so.
And this was a good talk.
Yes.
Indeed.